This is WR New York. We'll be back in a few moments. It's exactly 10:30, and it's time now for Lester Smith with a report from Wisconsin. Come on in, Les.
23% of the vote has now been tabulated in Wisconsin's Democratic presidential primary, and I think it's safe to say that a pattern has definitely emerged, which, barring some kind of a major shakeup within the next hour or so in the counting of these votes, that pattern is likely to remain pretty much as is. And as a result, it would seem there is one winner in the Democratic primary here in Wisconsin, and a number of very serious losers. So let's check some figures for you. As I say, we have 23% of the vote, or 760. Well, here's a later one. We now have 1/4 of the vote counted. 816 of the 3,290 statewide voting precincts. Running ahead, and he has been here all night, is Senator McGovern of South Dakota with 29% of the vote. He has never dropped below 29%. He was at one time as high as 32 or 3%. 29% of the vote with 106,631 votes cast and counted. In second place is Senator Hubert Humphrey. Now, this was pretty much the way the observers were picking a McGovern-Humphrey race for first and second, with Humphrey probably trailing, but not by very much. However, in this statistic, he is. He is down now to 22%. He had at one time been as high as 28. He's dropped down. He had held at 23% for quite a long time, but is now down to 22% of the vote with 82,155. Coming up very fast on the outside is Alabama's Governor George Wallace, who now has 20% of the total votes counted. 25% of all the votes have been tallied. Wallace has 20% of them, or 72,210. As a consequence, it is still conceivable, perhaps, that Wallace might even overtake Humphrey, in which case it would be a staggering blow to Humphrey. The manner in which he is trailing Senator McGovern in itself is a bad enough blow to him. But even worse off is Senator Edmund Muskie of Maine, who now has only 12% of the entire vote, which now marks a third of the 4 primaries in which he's been entered, in which his showing has been surprisingly poor, particularly for the man who was so high up on the lists no more than, let's say, at the turn of the year. He has 12% of 42,000 votes. Senator Henry Jackson is not doing well. He's got 8% in fifth place. And Mayor John-Lindsay, despite his protestations that he will continue to campaign in Massachusetts, Oregon, and California, certainly must be considered pretty much out of this whole picture. He has 7%. He's back down in sixth place, which is exactly where he was in Florida. Now, to give you an idea of what's happening perhaps throughout the state, there are 9 congressional districts. Senator McGovern is doing surprisingly well in all of them. As you know, he is the extremely liberal candidate amongst the Democrats. There were certain congressional districts where he was not expected to do well. He is leading in 7 of the 9 congressional districts. The only 2 in which Senator Humphrey is leading are those 2 congressional districts which are adjacent to the state of Minnesota. They are essentially a farm country, and in many respects, Humphrey was a sort of third senator for the people in these districts through his farm votes. Unlike Florida, where Wallace led in every congressional district but one, he is not leading in any, but he is running a strong second in 3 of them. In the first district, which surprisingly enough is the center of labor unrest, not surprisingly enough, it would be expected he might do well, although McGovern is doing extremely well there. Wallace is running ahead of Humphrey. He is also running second in the 2nd congressional district, which is in the center of the state, and which is also an area where this is interesting because it is the center of liberal Democratic strength, but also strong conservative farm vote, and Wallace is running second there. And throughout the rest of the state, he's holding his own. Now, in the important area of such things as delegates, he does not have any. The delegates so far are divided up between McGovern with 54 and Humphrey with 13. The Wallace third-place showing has not as yet gotten him any delegates. So, as we say, that is our picture, with more now than 25%, 26% of the vote. McGovern still 29%, Humphrey 22, Wallace with a strong 20%. He is trailing Humphrey by less than 10,000 votes, actually. Muskie a poor 4th. Lindsay and Jackson a very poor 5th and 6th. That's our report from WR's primary headquarters in Wisconsin. Back now to WR in New York.